She didn't check her phone. Not this time. Elena noticed it without trying. The phone had been there the whole time, on the table, within reach, close enough to pick up without thinking, and yet she hadn't touched it. Not in the last few minutes, not in the last hour, maybe longer. She wasn't sure. And that, more than anything, felt new. There was a time when that wouldn't have been possible, when the phone felt like an extension of her thoughts, always there, always present, always waiting for something to happen, a message, a reply. A sign, anything. But now, it was just an object, quiet, still, unimportant. Elena sat by the window, her hands resting loosely in her lap. The light outside had begun to soften, evening settling slowly over the city. Cars passed below, people walked without rushing. Everything felt slower, more distant, more complete. She glanced at the phone once, just once, not with urgency, not with expectation, just awareness. It hadn't moved, of course it hadn't. Nothing had changed. And for the first time, that didn't matter. She looked away, back to the window, back to the quiet, back to herself. It was strange, not checking, not wondering, not needing to know. She had spent so much time inside that cycle. Send, wait, check, repeat. Sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. And each time it felt necessary, important, unavoidable. But now, sitting there, she realized something simple. It had never been necessary. It had just felt that way. She leaned back slightly, letting her shoulders relax. The silence around her didn't feel empty. It felt full, not with noise, not with distraction, but with presence. Her presence. The kind she hadn't noticed before, because she had always been looking somewhere else, waiting for something outside of herself to respond, to confirm, to complete. But now, there was nothing to wait for, nothing to check, nothing to follow, and instead of feeling uncertain, she felt calm, a different kind of calm. Not the kind that comes from everything going right, but the kind that comes from no longer needing anything to. Elena stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, poured herself another cup of coffee. The small, ordinary movement felt grounding, real, present. She returned to the table, sat down again. The phone was still there, exactly where she had left it, unchanged, unopened. And this time, she didn't even look at it, not once. Her attention stayed where she was, in the moment, in the quiet. In the space she had spent so long trying to escape, she thought about the last few days, the message, the silence, the hesitation, the almost, the decision not to send. Each moment had felt important at the time. Each one had carried weight, meaning, But now they felt different, smaller, softer, not because they didn't matter, but because they no longer controlled her. And that was the difference. She didn't need to delete anything, didn't need to send anything, didn't need to understand everything. She just needed to stop checking. Stop returning to something that had already said what it needed to say, even if it said it through silence. Elena took a slow sip of her coffee. The warmth spread through her hands again, familiar, comforting, enough. Outside, the sky had turned darker, lights appearing one by one in the buildings across the street, each window holding its own quiet story, its own moments, its own endings. She watched for a while. Then leaned back in her chair, still, calm, present. The phone remained untouched. And for the first time, she didn't even think about picking it up. Because sometimes moving on isn't about a big decision. It's not about a final message or a clear ending. Sometimes it's just about not checking again.